pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In case of an emergency, there is a door in the back of the room that you could use and go out away from the building, or you could exit to my left, down the stairs and away from the building.
Today's
will-
the 18th, isn't it?
Yeah, 18th. Okay, let me let these guys sit down.
It's already used.
Yeah. You want to do roll call, please?
Donna Corbin-Savinsky.
Here.
Kevin Zorda.
Here.
Virginia Higley, here. Robert Hendrickson.
Here.
Ann Collins. Nancy Martin.
Here.
Phil Kober.
Here.
Sean Dean.
Next is public communications. Is there anybody in the audience want to speak regarding items not on the agenda? Anybody want to speak on items not on the agenda? And one last time, anybody want to speak on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we move forward. Agent correspondence, we did get an email regarding a save the date for land use training for June 1st at 7 p.m. So hopefully everybody can make that meeting. Next, we have approval of minutes from April 4th.
I will make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of April 4th, 2023.
Second.
Second is Ginny. Oops, we have Ann.
Oh, here's Ann.
Okay, what time is it? It is 7:01.
Yep.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any discussion on the meeting minutes?
Madam Chair, just real quick, I noticed last meeting, I came in a couple minutes late, and that's not reflected. Also, looking over, kind of seems a little over-summarized than I would like, so I'll just be voting against it. Thank you.
Just so you know, I recognize that you came in at 7:04.
Okay. And your reason for rejection again was?
Just some of the narrative seems summarized, so missing things.
Oh, okay. They've been doing that?
I do just want to point out they're allowed to do that. It doesn't have to be like a exact reflection of what was said word for word, because that's what our transcripts are for. And they could even be less descriptive than what they wrote.
Yeah.
So, for example, our ag comments just include motions and votes.
Thank you. One more discussion? Can I have roll call, please?
Donna Corbin-Savinsky.
Yes.
Kevin Zorda.
Yes.
Virginia Higley, yes. Robert Hendrickson.
Yes.
Ann Collins.
Yes.
Nancy Martin.
Yes.
Phil Kober.
No.
Yeah, so we have 6 in favor, 1 against. Motion passes. Next is the town attorney report. We did get something from the town attorney regarding legal opinion on DPNs, and we were asked to table that and for discussion until another meeting. So I've asked that the town attorney come to the meeting in May sometime so we could talk about it. Can I have a motion to
We need
table
to
it?
make a motion?
Yeah.
You don't need to make a motion.
You
I
don't?
didn't
Okay.
think so.
Okay. And then we were going to talk about the application process, how the application works. So I was wondering if you could do a motion to move it to item 15, miscellaneous?
Excuse me, Ms. Chair, I recommend we table that too, because the legal opinion will be changing that.
Well, it's just the process of, just a basic overview.
I understand, but the
Yeah.
entire process will be changed now.
I see.
All right, we'll wait.
All right, I'll make a motion to table the legal opinion and the application process until a meeting in May when the town attorney can.
You don't need to make a motion to table it.
Oh, we
I
don't?
don't believe. No, it's
Okay.
not like a pending.
Just a report.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
There's no continued public hearings. New public hearing. We have IW 677, 92 Post Office Road, application for the development of a single-family home, Winbrook Homes LLC owner, applicant, map 47, lot 10, R44 zone. This was tabled on April 4th. Can we have motions to remove from the table?
I'll make a motion to remove from the table post IW number 677, 92 Post Office Road.
Second.
Yep, so Ginny, second. Any discussion? Can I have roll call, please?
Donna Corbin-Savinsky.
Yes.
Kevin Zorda.
Yes.
Virginia Higley, yes. Robert Hendrickson.
Yes.
Ann Collins.
Yes.
Nancy Martin.
Yes.
Phil Kober.
Yes.
7 in favor, motion passes. Hi, gentlemen, could you state your name and address for the record?
Yeah.
Wait, Ms. Chair.
No, we're going to do a public hearing.
Don't forget to make the motion to open the public hearing.
Yes, we got to have a motion. This is a public hearing.
All right, I will make a motion to open the public hearing for IW number 67792 Post Office Road.
Do I have a second?
Second. Go ahead.
Nancy, I guess. Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor to open for a public hearing? Aye. Any against? Motion passes, unanimous. Roll call for public hearing.
Donna Corbin-Savinsky.
Yes.
Kevin Zorda.
Yes.
Virginia Higley. Yes. Robert Hendrickson.
Yes.
Ann Collins.
Yes.
Nancy Martin.
Yes.
Phil Kober.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, everybody's here. So there really is no ad because of the COVID
There was. It
rules?
was already advertised.
It's already advertised, so we're all set to that. So for the rules, the applicant will give their name and address for the records and then give statements about the application. Afterwards, the agents and staff can ask questions or make comments. We will then hear from the public, only regarding items on the public hearing for areas of concern for inland wetlands and our regulations. Please do not bring up anything regarding P&Z or other agencies. It's just in the wetlands. All those wishing to speak should have signed up on the sign-up sheet, which I have. If anybody else wanted to? Okay, we have that here. Yeah, so we'll give you approximately 5 minutes. If you have go over a little bit, that's fine, and then we'll do a couple rounds if needed, so everybody can speak. If any time the hearing becomes unruly or unmanageable, then I will call a recess and we'll stop the public hearing. We will then hear statements from the applicant to address any concerns from the public. The applicant had to send out notices to the abutting properties, and I'm guessing that was done?
That was complete. That was the reason why we had to table the public hearing from last meeting.
Okay, perfect, thank you very much. So the applicants are there. Get started.
Good evening. My name is Eric Davison. I'm a soil scientist and wetland scientist with 23 years of experience practicing in Connecticut. My office address is 10 Maple Street in Chester. I've also been a wetland commissioner like you folks on my local wetland commission for 10 years now. Just here on behalf of Winbrook Homes to give you an overview of the work that I did on the property. Back in April of 2022, I delineated the wetlands on the property, which is displayed on the survey map and project plans that you've seen. It's a small wetland boundary, 7 flags that were set across the back of the property, the south side of the property. It's documented in the letter that I drafted from April 9th of 2022, just summarizing the delineation work, the protocols that were followed, and the soil types that were observed. The wetland is an emergent shrub wetland. It's a groundwater-fed wetland with a saturated hydrology, which means at its wettest point, the surface water is just at the surface, but not, it doesn't have a topography or a hydrology that allows it to pond deeply for long periods of time. The wetland does continue off-site and is part of a much larger wetland. What I could view from the parts of the property that I saw from my flagging work is that there was a small intermittent stream embedded in the wetland to the south, and then it looked like it had some forested components as you go further south. But what I'm describing here reflects the wetland area that I saw in the southern part of the property. Soil types are described in my report, so I won't go through those in detail, but the wetland soils are a commonly observed soil complex that we see in this part of the state, Skiddaco Shaker and Maybed complex. It's a glacial lakebed wetland soil complex consisting of poorly drained and very poorly drained soils. And then the upland soils were mostly Brancroft soils with the areas on the northern part of the property closer to the street, approximately where the house is going to go, included some areas that we would classify as eudorthants, which is basically a man-made or man-disturbed soil type. After we did the delineation, the town staff had asked that we provide a letter just summarizing wetland impacts, and that letter was a separate letter that I drafted on March 1st of 2023. The basic summary of that is I don't see any adverse impact to the wetland from this single house, primarily because of the distance of the house and the construction activity from the wetland. And I note that in my letter. The construction work is going to still leave a 50-foot or more buffer from the wetland to the limits of disturbance. And then post-construction, the house is, roughly 100 feet from the wetlands, which, as I note in my letter, is an adequate distance, especially with these soil types, to capture and infiltrate any, typical pollutants that you'd see generated on a backyard. And then the types of pollutants you'd see generated on a driveway, like hydrocarbons and things that come off of cars. At that point, that driveway distance is pretty significant. It's over 100 feet from the wetlands. So that was the summary in my letter. This all hinges upon the fact that, the homeowner doesn't go in after the fact and, turn the whole property into a lawn down to the edge of the wetlands. This is referencing what I assume to be the post-construction yard area would roughly mimic the limits of disturbance. That's a summary of the work that I did. I can certainly answer any questions you have.
When you refer to wetlands, are you also referring to the escarpment soils?
Not sure what you mean by that.
Well, the map photo shows escarpment soils.
A map photo?
Oh, I apologize. Never mind. I'm on the wrong sheet. I apologize.
Okay. Yeah, that's not a. Yeah, escarpment's not something that we saw on this property.
Yeah, can you just remind me, in this, and maybe you don't even know this dirt pile to be removed, what the dirt pile was from and what this all is?
I'm not sure. That pile was there when we initially did the survey. But the plan is to inspect it after construction begin. If it's suitable, then we'll just use it to backfill and around the house.
Questions, Margaret? I had a couple questions. So, we did get 4 different site plans over the time. Have they changed a lot, or have they changed that?
No, Ms. Diver and the rest of the town team picked up a few things that needed to be addressed. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, yes. Yes, Ms. Diver and the other town team that was reviewing the drawing picked up a few, or made some comments that we had to address. One of them was where the water connection will be, need to be milled and paved for the full width of the roadway in front of the proposed house. The other change was the 100-foot buffer from the designated wetland wasn't drawn properly at the angle point, so we revised that to show it more accurately.
So your soil reports were from last year? I was wondering how you determined where to do flags.
How we determine.
Those 7 spots.
So.
You only did 7, so I was kind of wondering.
Yeah, so there's no state law or requirement for if you're talking about the separation distance between each flag.
Well, I was talking about is, this was part of a lawsuit from town. The stream was redirected.
I did not know that.
The waters were redirected. So I'm wondering what you looked at to determine where to start your, looking for the soil types.
Yeah, no, I did not know about the lawsuit. So,
It's kind of wondering is you would, I think I would check different areas.
yeah, so what you do is,
Our GIS map is not good for this.
He's actually showing an increase in wetlands on the site.
Oh, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
I'm asking, I would, if I was a soil scientist, I would go out and look at different areas.
So-
Like the old area and the new area, that's supposedly how things switched around. So I was wondering why you just came up with this nice little line along the way and not different spots across the property.
different wetland areas across the
Yeah.
property?
Check for some wetland soils across the property.
No, we do check for wetland soils across the whole property. Where the flags are set are indicating the actual wetland boundary.
Yeah, so did you check other areas then? Usually we have flags from other areas and I said, okay, there's nothing there, there's nothing. But these are the ones, we did 20 and these 7 are the ones we found. So I'm wondering if you did others besides 7.
Madam Chair, just to clarify, I think she's asking if there were additional like test pits on the site, spread out throughout the site where you tested the soils.
Yeah, so we do.
Doesn't show on here.
Well, so the soil scientist usually doesn't provide a map. We dig holes by hand. Yeah, so I never had a town ask me for locations where we dug holes across the property because you dig holes across the entire property, and when we find an area that we presume are wetlands, then the idea is you dig a hole roughly 30 feet above where you think the line is, 30 feet below, then you narrow that gap and narrow that gap and narrow it, and then you set the flags. The distance between the flags varies, depends on the topography. General rule of thumb is 30 to 40 feet for lines that don't have a lot of jog in them. For lines that are closer, you put them closer together. In this case, there's not a lot of undulating topography that defines the wetland line. But there were no wetlands on the interior of the property. In other words, north of my wetland line, there's no wetlands areas in there. But what you usually, what we typically do is we go to the property line, we dig a transect down. In other words, we walk down the property line and in areas that we sort of know are uplands because, we understand the vegetation and what you see on the ground surface. You dig a hole every 50, maybe 100 feet. As you work your way down, as you drop down the topography, you see characteristic wetland vegetation. You start to see indicators of hydrology on the ground. Then you start digging holes closer to where the wetland's going to be. Why the wetland line's different from what you had on another map, I don't know how different it was.
The original maps from our GIS maps wouldn't match. Yeah.
No, I think you had delineated wetland boundary. I saw on an old map. I think you had delineated wetlands.
It was the original subdivision map he's
Yeah.
referring to that was delineated by Michael Gragnolotti, and that showed a difference, like less wetlands on the lot than what Mr. Davison found. And just to clarify, usually our past applications that have wetland delineations, their site plans don't typically show all 20 flags.
I
Occasionally,
was just wondering in this case, because the town did divert the water.
hang on, I'm getting there. Hang on, let me finish. I'm getting there. So, as I was saying, hang on. So, usually they're test pits, and you'll see the test pits on the site plan occasionally, but for small lots like this, it's not really that common. And I did cross-verify the historical references for the wetlands back in IW 267 and IW 465, and then the stipulated judgment. So everything he's done has practically been what the judgment has said, that there has been an increase in wetlands due to that flooding event, and that's exactly what Mr. Davison reports show.
Did I answer your question well enough? Okay.
Oh, on the plans, you have a sump pump in the back right corner.
Yes. Pardon me?
That to me means there's going to be expecting the water.
Well, most house that has a basement, it is, well,
Can I weigh in only because I'm dealing with this right now because I'm building a house myself on a property that has no wetlands as about as dry a property as you can do. And I went through this with the town and with engineers and with architects, and it is the standard now, even in a house that you think will never have issues with water in the basement, to do a sump pump. That is the new, quote unquote, latest and greatest, especially with the new building codes that came out in October. I'm just my own personal experience.
I can verify what he said because we had this discussion in office too at the building department. A lot of newer houses you'll see these days have sump pumps, and they're usually included.
So just to clarify, it's mandated, are you saying now, or it's suggested?
It's not mandated. It's recommended. Basically, the idea being, as we know, you're seeing more intense and storms outside of the norm. You're getting more high intensity storms. You're basically talking about it's an increase of like 0.25% of the cost of foundation to add that in, and they basically tell you you'd be crazy not to in the event that you have a flooding issue in your basement and you don't have topography to drain with a curtain drain. You would install a sump pump. You need a place to outlet that water as it just in case.
Thank you.
So the other thing I did notice, going through all the paperwork that we gathered over the time, so they did say you found more wetlands, but on the DPN, the area of wetland was 14,601. On the application, it went down to 14,216. The wetland disturbance on the DPN was 0.3 acres. On the application is 0. The upland review area impacted was 1,000 square feet versus on the application 2,800, which is the house and driveway. The disturbed area was 21 square feet on the DPN and 16,100 on the application.
Ms. Chair, the DPN did not have the engineer involved in those numbers. Those are estimations from the applicant and staff. Then he got the engineer involved for the wetlands application. The numbers are more accurate.
Interesting. So we would have had wrong information the first time through.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, so the staff report shows under impacts, and there's, the discrepancy would show a decrease, which is what I just said. I'm looking at my notes. So there was some staff comments that I guess were resolved about the engineer said the water main and concerns for the flood zone and surface water the grading has to be to the east of the property line and not to pull the water. Is that been accounted for?
Yes, all staff department comments have been satisfied, hence all the revisions that the applicant had to do. There's probably been like 4 or 5 revisions just addressing engineering comments alone, one of them being drainage, the water connection, and then the flood zone.
Okay. Just check in. And then according to the court documents and the judgments, it says surface water from the other lots, 3, 4, 5, 6, can drain onto lots 1, 2, and 7. The lots 1, 2, and 7 can't drain onto 3, 4, 5, 6.
I can explain that.
So is
So
that
that is
taken into
correct.
account?
The applicant, if you notice the topography, there's like a little drainage ditch in between, so there will be no water runoff going on to the neighbors' lots. And the reason why I'm speaking on this one is because when I was doing the research through the stipulated judgment, we had a discussion with the town attorney just to conclude that this was accurate and that the applicant wasn't breaking that condition.
So that's been taken into consideration then? Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions before we have the audience? No.
Ms. Chair, can I please go over my staff report for a moment?
Sure.
Thank you. So as we know, this has a very complex history on this site. I'm just going to do a little summary of what I wrote because I put a lot of time into this particular project. So way back when, it was originally a 7-lot subdivision in 1998. This came under, as we know, IW 267, the application of John McCricky Jr., who requested a permit for the associated 7-lot subdivision. The approval contained 13 conditions. I gave you those conditions under IW 267. The soils were delineated by professional Michael Gragnolotti back in the past for the entire subdivision. Planning and Zoning heard this subdivision and approved it under PH 2038 on April 28th, 1998. So this subdivision was never properly filed, so the approval from Planning and Zoning was null and void. They had to reapply, hence the 2006 reapproval. Their attorney reapplied to Inland Wetlands and PZC in 2006. It was Inland Wetland number 465, Maryland Tyler Conservatrix proposed 7-lot subdivision involving excavation, filling, grading, and placement of structures in and within 100 feet of wetland and watercourses. This also included property located at 78 Post Office Road. So this approval contains further conditions that the original approval did not. So it contained 19 conditions. There was a new reason for condition 19, which says a new and separate inland wetlands and watercourse agency permit is required for the development of each individual parcel, which before I pulled this entire history, because this also wasn't mentioned in the judgment, that's when I found out that the DPN shouldn't really have been a DPN in the first place. It always should have been a wetlands permit. And before, when we discussed this, if I wouldn't have pulled these files, and I wouldn't have came across that condition. So this resulted in a lot of reservations from the Wetlands Agency at that time about approving the application for all 7 lots without the additional details, which is why they did condition 19. Condition 17 required the applicant to put a wetlands note on the subdivision plans. This wetlands note has a lot of power. The first one is a wetlands restrictive covenant, which applies to all lots that no wetlands disturbance shall occur without the approval of Enfield Inland Wetlands. This is not in the judgment. 2 says portions of this lot contain wetlands and/or watercourses and are therefore subject to the Enfield Wetlands regulations as amended. No disposing of leaves, grass clippings, brush, or other lawn refuse, grading, filling, or other modification shall be made to the portion of this lot that is within 25 feet of wetlands. So then PH 2565 comes around for the re-subdivision, and it was approved and filed and is now valid. Then we have a certain time of events go by, and now we have the 2011 to 2016 stipulated judgment from the Maryland Tyler case versus the town of Enfield. So this was a court case between the property owners, Tyler, and the town of Enfield, where the owner claimed without their consent or permission that the town had caused water runoff from other properties upland to drain onto the owner's properties, and that a permanent pond and stream were created on the owner's properties, resulting in damage. As a result of the stipulated judgment, the town had to purchase lots 1, 2, and 7. Lot 2 is the property that we're talking about today. Furthermore, the town has to permit surface water runoff from the stipulated judgment from lots 3, 4, 5, and 6 to lots 1, 2, and 7, and they cannot prevent the drainage of water from these lots once built for single-family homes, which is what we see now. Number 14 decreed that lots 3, 4, 5, and 6 shall not need any further approvals to market, sell, or build any of the said lots within the subdivision, and that only a building permit and COs are necessary. So this refers to 94, 96, 98, and 100 Post Office Road. So usually when staff goes through historical stuff like this, we'll update building applications, we'll put little notes on them to help future staff find this history all over again, because my predecessors did not do that for me, hence why it is so hard to find historical references, and we don't organize them by address. So without that file number, it's so challenging. So basically, the condition about development having to pull wetlands permits prior to the development of each lot was a condition determined prior to the stipulated judgment under Inland Wetlands number 267. So that should clarify some of the confusion between the conditions from the court case and the conditions from the previous permits. So basically, moving forward, the applicant is here today for a single-family home, following the procedures of all these conditions. They do have their professionals on team, a professional engineer, a land surveyor, a professional soil scientist, who have done a lot more work than what we would usually require of a small residential property for a new home. However, given the circumstances and complexity of the history, it's pretty fair that he did hire these professionals. So lastly, I just wanted to talk real quick in my staff report about impacts, disturbances for stormwater, because we didn't really discuss that too yet. From what I found in the applicant's materials and submitted documents, the site project results in minimal disturbance to the upland review area. The approximate distance of the project is about 51 feet away from the nearest wetland. The buffer was revised per the applicant's engineer to show a correct distance of 100 feet for the flagged wetlands upland review area. Before, there was a 20-foot measurement discrepancy within that buffer line. Now correctly revised to show the correct distance, the project will actually result in minor disturbance about 50 feet away from the closest flagged wetland of wetland flag number 1. Stormwater runoff will not be directed towards the wetlands. It is directed towards the west vegetated open area. According to the applicant's narrative, the gentle slope configuration of the site and the soils will allow stormwater to drain on site and infiltrate existing soils, as Mr. Davison had previously mentioned. The site plans were revised to accommodate for the FEMA 500-year flood zone X. So this is where our last revision came into play. This was a discussion between the town engineer, assistant town engineer, John Cabibbo, and a couple of the planners in the planning office, myself included. So we don't regulate the 500-year, we regulate the 100-year. And so because we don't regulate the 500-year, we don't have a requirement for the applicants to show topography of this FEMA floodline. The other issue that comes into play, if FEMA itself does not define the topography line of this layer, it is very difficult for the applicant to find this because it requires a lot of work with the FEMA agency. So basically, they did revise the plans to show an approximate distance of where that 500 flood zone will be, and the house is located out of it. And I did attach that FEMA map for you to view. And then ENS controls are also included for the applicant application, as like we have all our other applications with silt fencing, anti-track pads, and this will prevent any sediment from running off the property. So I don't have any site-specific conditions, but that was all the research I had done, so hopefully that helps with any confusion. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, any more questions? No. So we'll move to the audience. Gentlemen could sit back. We have Lori Longi. Where's my timer?
Thank you, that's okay.
Thank you. For my timer, where's, oh, there it is, clock.
Okay, we're sharing.
You're sharing, there you go.
Sorry.
That's okay, that works.
Lori Longi, 1427 Enfield Street. In 2008, I noticed the large amount of water on Lot 1 and 2 on the subdivision plan. Lot 2 is the subject of this permit. The town dug the drainage ditch and a plunge pond and created a stream. This was a 6 to 7 year lawsuit which ended in the court stipulated judgment that's in your packet. I have supplied to you a brief history of the case and some other documents from the case. I want you to know that the prior Wetlands Commission would not renew the permit because of the significant changes to these lots, which is not in your history from staff. There is an affidavit from Jeff Board, who is the town engineer at that time. Important points were Beeman's Brook watershed, which is Lot 2. It's in the Beeman's Brook watershed. The Beeman's Brook is downstream, and he mentions the effects of upstream activities. He also mentions to avoid increases in peak discharge, which should be determined the effect of the downstream facilities. I would like to point out that H in your regulation addresses these issues and states to identify downstream, which are off-site, adjacent properties, and the watershed. The first photo in your packet is the old house, which I highlighted in green on the map, 2338 original from the P&Z, so you could see for reference the water from the stream overflowed and made a large pond. This was one of the many photos that were taken over the 7-year lawsuit. Note that it was almost to the property line of Lot 2 in this particular photo. And the water was one of the reasons that the town had to buy back the lot. If you go over there today, there is standing water all over Lot 1. And this weekend, the whole area was flooded. The second and third photos are the sheer size of the pond and the flooding that occurred over these lots. During the 7-year lawsuit, during that time period, we had a fair amount of rain. Over the past few years, it's been fairly dry. The old wetlands maps were prior to the stream and the pond on these lots. This needed to be reflagged, especially on the boundary of Lot 1, where all the water is. The area is overgrown and difficult to see, but it's filled with water. It appears by the soil report that he used the existing wetlands mapping, and it wasn't even specific that if he took samples or if he just delineated the rear border. And I have in the second part of my presentation about the wetlands delineation, so I don't want to go into that right now. Based upon the information on the map, the proposed house is raised up 3.5 feet higher from the original subdivision maps. That means that fill has to be brought in, and the house is also moved out of the PNC approved building envelope, since it's now 36 feet from the southern property line. I think that they have moved the house up and over to stay out of the flood zone and away from the wetlands. Georgina noted on the plans in red that this was not an A2 survey, and it appeared to have the property boundaries were incorrect. The new plan does not seem to be any different. What this plan does not show is how they are going to take the roof leader water and divert it from running on Lot 3, which it will according to the grades and on this plan. They can pipe the water so it does not run onto the adjacent property of Lot 3. They could put in a catch basin, and they need to address the turnabout portion of the driveway as well. The entire lot needs to be flagged with the soil test borings to find the true wetlands and the present conditions of this area. This lot needs to be re-engineered to prevent stormwater runoff to Lot 3, as the court stipulation said. Thank you.
Next is Michelle Menard.
Hello. I'm Michelle Menard, so I live at 94 Post Office Road, the neighboring property. It's immediately next door. So I reviewed the proposed plans and have a couple concerns about how it's going to impact my property and the wetlands in this area. So the application indicated that no stormwater runoff will be directed towards the wetland area or to neighboring properties, but currently there is stormwater runoff without the proposed house and driveway that does flow onto my property and then back into the wetland area as flagged. The first photo I'm submitting shows an aerial image of both my property and the subject property. The line that's red dashed is the property line, and there's a low spot in blue, which is where water runoff kind of flows and then proceeds over the property line onto my property, going down, pooling towards the trees, which is where the wetlands are flagged. This runoff activity has gotten worse since the lot was cleared. The proposed application maps show that much of the stormwater from the house and driveway will follow that same path because of the elevations. And that's in the fourth photo I'm submitting to you guys. There's also the second and third photos were captured in a recent storm that actually shows the flow of the water doing this as I'm describing. So I wanted to provide those to you guys to show that there is current runoff into the wetlands. let's see. Their plan, the driveway grade for the turnaround also slopes down towards the side where that water is flowing into and running off onto my property. And by the plan, it appears that there's less than 12 feet of a sloping grade going to that low spot, which does not sound like a significant area for infiltration, which would allow possibly pollutants from the driveway or the lawn to be carried into the wetlands, as is happening currently. The proposed application has changed the placement of the house from when it was previously approved, so it is closer to my property line. It also shows a change in elevation from 120 feet to 123 feet. These changes impact how water will run off the house and the driveway, as there's more of an overall slope and actually less area between the house and the wetlands. I want to emphasize that this runoff situation is not hypothetical. This is actually happening, as I provided in the photos, and it has been regularly happening during storms. So I think there really needs to be a stormwater mitigation strategy to plan for, to avoid magnifying this impact to the wetlands and the runoff onto my property, which did not appear to be considered in the application. And hearing that there was a staff comment saying it should be flowing east, which is, towards the wetlands, towards my property, is a little concerning. I don't know what the right solution is, but something that addresses this problem, whether a drainage system, a ditch that directs water away from my property in these wetland flags, or some different elevation plan, or moving the house or driveway, whatever it is, there has to be some sort of solution. Those are my concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Anne Marie. There you go. Thank you. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone. Anne Marie Galdenzi, 1330 Enfield Street. This property has a long history, as you know, for applications. The history is very important to this property and any property when changing, adding, or planning to build. For example, this property, as you know, is in a lawsuit for a few years. And in its history, beavers made a dam in the culvert and were living in this pond. The local neighborhood dubbed it the Beaver Gate. We all know the beavers don't live in dry drainage ditches. I ask you to please look at the back wetlands history on this property. It could help understand the area and then make an informed decision to protect the neighborhood and the wetlands. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nikki Price.
Good evening. Nikki Price, 1324 Enfield Street. My neighbor, Lori Longy, approached me to sign a petition to have an open hearing for the property located at 92 Post Office Road. The reason for the petition is to have public input where the property's history and lawsuit could be presented. It is my understanding town staff has stated that a petition of 25 signatures were needed to have this public hearing. Having obtained more than the required signatures, 39. The petition was submitted to town staff, who promptly denied it by saying it was jurisdictional and not an application. Please refer to Marie S. Eldenson, Staff Counsel, April 5th, 2023, DPN, Propriety of Petition, which states, issue, whether a DPN application constitutes an application for purpose of Connecticut General Statute 22A through 42A C1, and therefore a petition with sufficient signatures requiring a public hearing must be accepted. Short answer, see the attached ILO 23-8, which supports that any application submitted to the IWWA is subject to a petition. Thankfully, we are here tonight by the action taken by IWWA to correct the flawed actions of town staff in denying the petition in the voice of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Karen Carriage? Camage, sorry.
I usually say Cambridge.
Oh, okay. I didn't look at, it was an M or two R's.
I don't write very well. Hello, my name is Karen Camage, and I reside at 40 Fairfield Road. I grew up at 42 Fairfield Road, so I'm very familiar with the property we're discussing. As I rode my bike down Post Office Road to the old Enfield Dairy Bar, do you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
On South Road, and to the Enfield Mall often as a kid. So Fairfield Road is right around the corner. It's right off of Oliver. Yeah, so I've been down that street a lot. I also served on the Inland Wetlands Agency from July of 2007 through July of 2011 as a wetland agent and as vice chair. And I appreciate the time and effort you guys give as members of this agency, and thank you for your service to Enfield. So I'll try not to rehash what you've already heard, but I would like to share with you my perspective of what occurred with this property or these properties in the subdivision during my time on the agency and my concerns with building on this particular lot. So prior to my time on the agency, so this is a little history you've heard, but I'm just summarizing it again. The Inland Wetlands Agency verified and approved the soil wetlands and wetland delineations for a 7-lot subdivision on Post Office Road, first in 1999 and again in 2006. So the property that the applicant is proposing is lot number 2 of that subdivision. At that time, there was no evidence of any watercourse and no pond on any of the properties, only a very dry drainage ditch. And in 2001, while I was on the inland wetlands, a request for an extension of the 2006 permit was received by the commission. Now, when I was on the commission, as applications were received, we assigned an agent to be the point person for an application. And at that time, Agent Brian Peruta agreed to take the lead on this application. I don't know if you guys do that, but it worked out good. It was like you kind of followed up and, it worked out good for us. He made numerous visits to the property and reported his findings to us, documenting them with pictures of what he saw. I had concerns with what he shared and visited the site multiple times myself. So we observed at that time in 2011 a continuously running stream, a large pond, beaver dams, and other water wildlife, ducks, muskrats, frogs. At that time, in 2011, in our opinion, it was a high-value wetland. How the water got there became the subject of a lawsuit, but would not factor into our decision to deny the extension of the permit. To us, it didn't matter how it got there. The fact that there were wetlands there was what we were responsible for. There had been substantial changes to the characteristics of the property, specifically to Lot 1, that concerned the majority of the agency. The extension was denied. And I have a copy of the meeting minutes for you if you guys don't have them. Unfortunately, I only took one copy of everything. So both Agent Peruta and I were called to testify in the lawsuit. And I have a copy of Agent Peruta's affidavit for which goes into greater detail on what we observed on the property. I also have a document that summarized the evidence presented in the lawsuit for the agency that has a lot of the pictures that he took for our review as inland wetland agents. It's this agent's responsibility to protect our wetlands. Lot number 1 is no longer buildable, where originally it had been. So why? Are new wetlands present on this lot? Lot number 1 borders lot number 2. Before permitting any building on lot number 2, wouldn't it be prudent, if not necessary, to redelineate the wetland boundaries? Is Beeman's Brook watershed impacted by building on lot number 2? Is the town of Enfield wetlands map out of date? if that is what the applicant's soil scientists used to determine any wetlands impacts, I have concerns. And from his discussion, what he shared with you, it sounded like he did use that old wetlands map because the only boundaries of wetlands were at the back of the property on that map. From my professional experience as a data analyst for a large property casualty insurance company, and very interesting is over the past 10 years before I retired, we had a huge effort to obtain current flood risk information on prospective properties to better underwrite our business because of concerns with flooding. Decisions made using out-of-date, bad data are often bad decisions and can be costly decisions. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak regarding, that hasn't spoken yet? No? Okay. Anybody want to come back? Discuss with this one. You have enough?
No.
Virginia, no, share.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, we could share.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Flag pink.
Pink flag, tree clusters.
Okay.
Lori Longi, 1427 Enfield Street. I just presented you with two maps. The issue I have with the wetlands flagging and the mapping is by the photographs that the wetlands, and this was also in your packet, you'll see these flags on the back of this tree line. If you look at the map that I just gave you, the aerial view is the cluster of the trees, and it's approximately halfway from the middle of the property line. And the pink flag is at that cluster of trees. And then if you look at the next page on the map of the soil scientist's mapping, he has the blue line that says that that's where the wetlands flags are. However, the cluster of trees is north or, towards Post Office Road. So, yet the blue line on his map is not in the same location as it appears to be different than where the tree cluster is. And so therefore, I have a concern with either the engineer marking the actual wetlands flags or the fact that somehow doesn't match up with the actual realistic section of the on the photos. And then I have one last, if you
Yep, go ahead.
let me go. Okay. Timeline of 92 Post Office Road, the determination of permit need. I was watching the meeting on cable TV and I saw the determination of permit need come up. I went into the office and saw Georgina Driver and explained to her that there was a 6 to 7 year long court case on this property. And so I wanted her to know because the wetlands permit was not extended and there were significant changes in the land such as a stream and a pond. She copied all of my documents that day that I brought in and then told me it would help her so she wouldn't have to look up the timelines because everything was dated. I expressed that the people would want to speak, and she was very nice and told me to get 25 signatures to request a public hearing. The following week, I went in with 39 signatures. She refused to accept my petition and said that the determination of permit need was jurisdictional and that she talked to other planners and attorneys. And since I had been in, I could not request a public hearing. I went downstairs and I actually called an attorney, which suggested to me that I add it into the record under correspondence. The way the commission would be aware of it, and they would be understanding of the public interest. So I went back upstairs and tried to submit the petition under correspondence. Then I said I would do a letter. And then Lori Witten, her boss, actually came out. And the two of them said they had no place to put this. They kept saying that the determination of permit need was not an application. So if it's not an application, I said, then why couldn't you take it in as correspondence? I do not understand why any letter, a petition, materials could not be submitted under correspondence if it was not an actual application. Lori said that we're not trying to make things difficult for me, but I said, yes, you are making them difficult. I felt that this was improper because how would any citizen tell the Wetlands Agency a concern if they had absolutely no right to speak, submit a petition, turn in any correspondence to the board for a determination of permit need? And besides that, the staff had the information, they had copied my information, and it was still not shared with this board. It was just not even in the file. The night of the meeting for the determination of permit need, she actually stated that the case was a few decades old and basically irrelevant. I'm paraphrasing what she said, but that was the gist of it. This troubled me more because I was involved in that case for the 6 or 7 years. And it was settled less than 7 years prior. And it was very relevant to the determination of permit need and this application. The commission actually requested a full permit, and I am thankful that in spite of all the obstacles that were put in front of me and the 38 other people that signed this petition, that you said that it needed to come in for a full application. I saw the information from the town attorney and in the master packet, and I felt the need to tell the commission about this because I couldn't speak about it until tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak again? Anybody else want to speak again? Okay, thank you. Okay, do the applicants want to come back up? To address any topics or, thank you.
Eric Davison again. I just want to clarify on the wetland delineation. I'm not sure what's being referenced about using maps to delineate wetlands. We don't use town maps. We don't use old subdivision maps to delineate wetlands. We go out in the field and dig holes and identify wetland soils and put flags around it. As you heard, once that map was completed and surveyed, and the wetlands are actually larger than what was delineated during the subdivision that was approved. So the wetlands that I flagged were more conservative than the first soil scientist. So I'm not sure what the controversy here is over the flags. The reference to my sketch looking like a flag is located near some trees and not in the right spot. The sketch in the back of my report is simply a sketch for orientation. So the surveyor knows how many flags we put and roughly where, so they know how to go out and find the flags and survey them. The surveyor locates the flags. That's your legal location of a flag because it's done by a surveyor. It's accurate. The map in my report is just a sketch. It's just for orientation. The town maps that show wetlands are not accurate. No town has an accurate depiction of all the wetlands in town unless you go down to Fairfield County where they've literally paid someone to delineate every wetland in town. Every soil scientist knows that. The maps that are on file are the USDA state soil survey maps that we all just look at as a reference to understand what the general soil types are on a site before we go out to that property. I understand that neighbors are seeing water, especially the neighbor to the east, are seeing water on the back of her property, but look at the subdivision map. The whole back of her property is a wetland. That's where you're going to see water, is in a wetland. So I don't find that shocking. I understand that there's been some changes in hydrology in this wetland over the past 20, 30 years. That usually doesn't result in a drastic change in wetlands. And again, you saw the wetland line increase. So I'm not sure what's being what the questions are here from the neighbors. Let me comment on Lot 1 that's west of this lot. Looking at the old subdivision map, I can see why nobody's going to build on that lot, because look at the house that they laid out on that, however many years it was ago. They're showing a house 25 feet from the wetlands. The house that's proposed here is ultimately 100 feet or close to 100 feet from the wetlands. That's a lot different than 25 feet. So that lot 1, you look at the wetlands on that lot, I mean, that does not, to me, does not strike me as a very buildable lot. So it's just my own personal comment. But please, if you have any questions about the delineation, because I'm not really sure what the controversy is over that.
No questions on the delineation, but just two questions for the applicant. So can you guys just go over in the survey, it got brought up, either the cut or fill for how you guys are going to construct the property. It sounds like you guys will need a fill. Can you confirm that and then explain where fill will be coming from?
No, we won't need a fill. The excavation for the foundation for the house, we will use that as the fill around the house.
Thank you. And then the second question I was going to ask, just given the nature of the wetlands and their proponent to flooding, have you guys considered any alternatives to construct with staying completely out of the 100-foot regulated area?
The drawing shows the house 100 feet from.
Yeah, no, I understand the house, but obviously you guys are here because there will still be some disturbance in the upland review area within the 100 feet just through the construction. Have you guys explored alternatives trying to completely stay out of that 100-foot review area?
It would be very difficult to stay out of the 100-foot area.
Okay, no, that's fine, that's fair.
You've got to put silt fence in to prevent any sediments from washing towards the wetland area. So just driving there with the equipment will actually disturb the area. It won't impact it, but just disturb it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So with his question, you're not bringing fill in, but the house is going to be 3.5 feet higher?
The foundation itself, and then the excavated material because you're going to have a 4-foot cut, approximately 4 feet of cut within the existing topography there. That's over 200, with the size of the footprint, it's approximately 220 cubic yard of material that will be taken out just for to get to the bottom of the basement. So that material will be reused around the house.
So it's not going to cause a hill or anything for drainage?
No,
It's going to be level with the people.
it's not going to be a flat. It's not going to be a flat topography because you need a little bit of
Yeah, you
pitch
need a little
away
bit.
from the
Yeah,
house
yeah.
so that the water doesn't.
Yeah, you need some, but
Right.
it's not going to be 3.5 feet.
And just one comment, and this, 94 Post Office Road, part of that lot actually drains towards 92. Plus the roadway slopes towards 92 as well. But, we don't really see it as a big issue, but that 94 does slope towards 92 as well, part of it.
I think I do have a question and maybe clarification from the person that said this that I wrote in my notes. I think they were asking about a drainage ditch between the two properties. Is that something that could be considered to alleviate some of this water? Is it necessary? Can you speak to that?
I'm not sure if a drainage ditch is necessary. Based on the soil type in that location, the water should be able to infiltrate easily. The only runoff that's going to be on that property is from the house leader, and that will most likely go towards the back and towards the front of the property. So it's the only runoff would be just from the regular rainstorm. From the regular? Rainstorm, rain. Yeah.
How about from the driveway turnaround? Because that's the closest part. That's 22 feet from the property line. And just a little farther is the neighbor's fence to the east.
Yeah,
Is 22 feet enough?
that
or-
driveway, at least 60% of the water for that driveway will go toward the street. And that will be collected by the catch basin, just not too far from the driveway entrance. And then with the cross-section, a little bit will go into the proposed grassed area on either side.
So to clarify, 60% of the water will go to the road,
It's an approximate.
to the catch basin?
Just from
What's going to happen to
just
the other
just
40%?
driveway.
Yeah.
Well, the driveway is going to have a cross-section, which some of it will run off into the existing property.
Percentage-wise, that
So
isn't great.
the driveway pitch.
Sorry.
The driveway pitch towards or slope towards the existing street, 92 Post Office Road. So obviously, some of the water will go to the street, and some will go on the abutting property, not property, but the abutting side of the driveway.
And I think that might be the point of the public, is that 40% is too much for that property between to handle, and they're looking for
No,
possibly
the type of
some
soil
kind of
that's-
drainage ditch.
Sorry, but the type of soil, it shouldn't be, most of it should infiltrate in the ground.
I think the evidence of the pictures, however, if I'm understanding this correctly, is showing that it doesn't presently do that.
So let me ask you this, why couldn't this house be moved? It seems like it's way east. Why couldn't it be moved more west?
Hi, Reinhard von Hollander, the applicant, 14 Brandon Road, West Hartford. I just want to get back to the drainage swale. If you look at the 22.7-foot mark between this property line, and you look at the contours that we were proposing, okay, you can see the line that's the 122 line, and then there's a 124 line up against the garage.
If you could
That's-
just give me a minute to get
Right here,
there.
right here.
Okay, thank you.
So we're talking, so this is 119?
Yep.
So that's pretty close to where the original is?
So if you look at the end of the turnout area, okay, and you look at down to that hatched mark, that's a 119. If you look at the abutters, they have a 121. So the abutters of 94 is actually coming into what's a natural drainage ditch there.
So there is,
Okay,
yeah.
so our existing is 119, the abutters 121, and then if you look down towards the south and east, you'll see that the property lines, the hatch lines, the 119, 118, 117, all go away from the property on both sides, on 94 and 92.
They go west.
Excuse me, southwest, okay?
Yeah.
And then if you look in front of the house, the 123 line that we're proposing, okay? So that driveway goes down, it goes in 1 foot intervals, it goes 123, 122, 121, and that goes all toward, that sheet flows all towards the street, okay? And then to the east, okay, you'll see that line that's proposed, that exists, and the fill that they brought in for 94 is the 120 line, and that clearly shows a line that flows to the south and into the wetlands area.
Yeah.
18, 119.
But the water can go towards the property. It can't come back this way, yeah.
Yep.
There was consideration that was understood through the different documents that we were privy to that called out the fact that we couldn't.
Yeah, you could.
We
yeah.
couldn't, but they could.
Yeah,
And hence the swale,
yeah.
which is a best practice.
So So it looks like the existing topography, the highest point where the house would be is 119?
123?
No, 119 is the existing. I don't
Oh,
see
okay.
anything higher. But then you're raising it 3 feet
To
Why?
get positive pitch towards the street.
from the house.
Correct.
So back to my question previously, why couldn't this be moved a little bit more northwest? Like, just to give a little bit more room there to allow more infiltration into the
That's
ground?
north, that way.
Commissioner Zorda?
Yeah.
Putting it more in that direction brings it more into the 500-year flood plain.
yeah.
So
Okay.
I believe they were trying to avoid any more impacts to the flood zone if possible. So this site plan was particularly tricky.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, it is a T2 and A2 accuracy survey. It's even beyond that, it has V2 accuracy. That's vertical baseline accuracy. It's a very highly accurate site plan and survey. You don't usually see a lot of those these days with V2 accuracy. So from what I noticed, because I went out to site just to verify the topography on the site plan, the drainage part, because as we know, the neighbor has a right to drain. So when you look at the 94 post office topography and what the applicant is proposing, water kind of meets in the middle at this drainage swale, and the swale flows back, not up towards the neighbor's property. I'm not sure what date these pictures were taken that were submitted by the public members, but it just shows like a significant amount of flooding. It almost looks like a storm event, but don't quote me on that. That's just what I'm observing. So I just want to point that out, they are having a drainage swale, and there should not be an increase in water runoff to the neighboring property based off of these, based off the material submitted. The other thing I want to point out is the GIS on our town's website shows practically no wetlands on this lot. It is severely out of date. Our wetlands layer was flown over once, and that was it. So I've been trying to find other towns that have this issue as well, because usually when we get map amendments, we can update this layer, and it shows an increase in wetlands 9 times out of 10. So some towns do the yearly map amendments where they adopt all the soil delineations of that year, which I believe we were talking about a couple months ago. So I wouldn't go by the GIS, I would go by the delineation.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing is just for the record, our regulations are a little bit outdated. It doesn't really line up with the state statutes. So the DPNs, and we've been having this discussion with the town attorney, and we weren't going to discuss this tonight. We were going to table it. But our office had issued a memo about the legal opinion for the DPN and how it was a misapplication from the town attorney's office. But let me explain why real quick in a brief way. The wetlands regulations refer to DPNs as application, so it's a misapplication of terminology, which does not line up with the state statutes for Chapter 440 for wetlands and watercourses. So DPNs are actually jurisdictional rulings where the agency makes a decision, not something that's appealable because we don't publish it in our legal ad to be appealed, since it's not appealable. So that was the confusion, and actually, thanks to Ms. Longi, who actually brought this to our attention, we were able to understand that the past process for DPNs has been incorrect for past predecessors. It dates like 4 predecessors beyond me, and no one's caught it. And I was wondering, when I first got hired and I was doing building permits, it was so hard for me to understand DPNs versus agent approvals. And now it makes sense because the regulations are incorrect. And that's something we're going to address in the future just to streamline the process. We were advised by our attorney, Mark Serrato, just to make sure to verify Ms. Longi's response for correspondence. And that correspondence is strictly for the agency members, not for the public, which the public can communicate under public communication. However, the only conflict with that is if it's on the agenda, then they can't discuss it. So all these things that Ms. Longi brought to our attention in the office, unfortunately, we weren't able to help her right away. We did research them extensively, and thanks to her, it did bring up some corrections we're going to talk about in the future. Thank you.
Anybody to my left? Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak again? Nope. I guess we do.
Hi.
Hi.
Michelle Menard, the abutting neighbor. So, I mean, I find it's kind of hard to discount that there is runoff into the wetlands when it's already happening, and they just testified that they are going to go right into that low-lying area that's running off onto the property, right to the wetlands. So I don't see how there's not going to be an increase in stormwater when you put that driveway in that house that's going to slope down right into that same low spot that, yes, my property also slopes down into, that's going straight back into the wetlands as flagged. So I'm not sure how this application can be accepted as is, because currently, you know, it flows into the wetlands, and without any sort of mitigation to prevent it from getting to this point and flowing over and down to that flagged area, it's going to continue to do that, and it's going to be an increase of whatever's coming off of their house and their driveway. And so I just want to emphasize, like, this is happening in many, many rainstorms throughout the year. I just happened to be able to catch a picture on one, like, in the last week or so. You know, and it's pooling and it's staying there, and that's the flagged wetland. Thank you.
Yep.
Lori Longi, 1427 Enfield Street. There's an answer to this. All they have to do is put a swale in, pipe it, do whatever. They are not allowed to drain on the other lot. And that is what's happening now. And it started with the trees cutting down. So all they have to do is do the engineering and get it to drain. They can drain on the town's lot too. They just cannot drain on the other lot, the abutting lot. So it can be done. It just needs to be reworked. It's not an impossible task. All that has to be done is re-engineered, or the roof leaders get piped out to the storm sewer. There's answers. They're just not willing to do anything at this point. So I just can't see how you can approve something that's already impacting the neighbor, and this court stipulation says you can't do that. And I would say go out, get in the car tomorrow, drive by and take a look at it. There's no ditch down the side of those properties. It's literally surface water running off when it's raining.
Ms. Chair, I have a question for Ms. Longi, if I may. You mentioned that there were trees there before, correct? And
What was that?
there were trees there before along the property line. They were cut down.
There's a whole lot full of them.
Yeah, they
Well,
only cut
hang
the
on.
portion where the house was going.
So they were near the property line, essentially, but a little bit far away, right? Like along that general
There was
area.
a variety of trees. There
Okay,
was
so
a
my
bunch of
question
different-
is, when those trees were there, was there still resulting in like water pooling and like an increase in water, or did the trees help mitigate that storm water when the trees were there?
When the trees were there, there was less water.
Okay, so I'm just going to note that down, and if you come back to me later about that.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment, speak? Okay.
So, Madam Chair, just two things, and this is more for talking us as an agency. I want to pitch the idea if the agency is interested in doing a site walk on the property at some point. And then the second item is, obviously, since we got some new information from the public, I would be in favor of continuing the public hearing once we've asked all our questions. Thank you.
Yeah, just remind us of the timeline.
Yep, you have time. Can I recommend one thing? And just a thought that came to my mind listening to the concerns of the public. And of course, the applicant has to be open to this too. But I know we were discussing a drainage swale or other thing like relocating the house. So as a planner, it's really hard sometimes when we come across problems that have different ways to go about them. And one of the goals of being a planner is to come up with solutions for hard situations like this. And I always try my best to strive to that matter. So I'm thinking maybe if the applicant would be willing to do some kind of vegetative buffer or some landscaping on that side. Good landscaping, not like just like a couple of trees, but like actual landscaping that can help reduce water runoff and prevent water pooling from that property line. Just a thought.
Okay. So, I see there was a motion, oh,
I hate to ask you back.
we're not quite on that spot, but okay.
Would you characterize the soils that you, the glacial-lacustre soils, as moderately well-drained, poorly well-drained? I missed that part.
So the wetland soils are poorly and very poorly drained.
Are they poorly enough drained so that they would sustain ponding on a
Yeah,
2 or 3 inch rain?
could I see the pictures? I mean, that would be helpful. Maybe
Yes,
I can,
here. These are for the file now.
so it's just so I can understand what the neighbors are seeing. Was thinking the pictures the neighbors just gave. Are they in here?
Yep,
Okay.
everything's in there.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Oh, this is helpful. Okay.
I'm not sure when those were dated exactly.
And these are, can I just ask who dropped these? I'm just curious, just so I know where these are oriented.
Ms. Longy submitted those into the record.
Could I ask someone just so I understand?
Usually,
where
we
they're
can't
taken?
Usually we're not supposed
we
to,
can't do
but-
the public cross communication. We take in questions from the public,
trying
and
to
you can
understand where they
of
were-
course you can
yeah.
re-answer them at the next meeting.
Trying to understand which.
No, unfortunately.
But I think I understand. Yeah, I mean, this is typical for what you would see in lake bed wetland soils after a storm event, and I see that this looks like end of winter, prior to leaf out. I mean, this is typical for what you would see. I don't see the exact wetland area on 92 in the photos. But I think this is just more of a shot from the neighboring wetland.
And we did have a motion, well, we did,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, what I was going to say is, we do have a motion to continue the public hearing and possibly do a site walk. So maybe we,
I didn't catch a motion.
no, it wasn't a motion, it was a comment.
Oh,
So.
I
to
would
do a site
recommend
walk and
letting
continue
the applicant
hearing.
finish, and then you can make the motion,
Yeah.
just to
So I think we
clarify the
should-
record.
To answer your question, though,
And it'll
yes.
give him time to review all the paperwork that we got today.
Yes, you would see what we would call temporary flooding in a wetland like this after a storm.
Are these soils significantly less well-drained than the typical Windsor sandy loam?
Certainly than a Windsor soil, because a Windsor soil is an upland soil that is classified as excessively drained. So yes, so these soils they're usually coarse textured over fine textured, so they take a few days to drain. But yes, you do see flooding. But what I'm trying to understand, and what I believe I'm seeing from the pictures, is that the flooding is contained in the wetland, which is not unusual in a large wetland in a glacial lake bed. Yeah, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing evidence that people's entire properties are flooding, but the wetlands on people's properties are flooding, which is what wetlands do after a storm. I hope I'm not.
Can you give us an idea what the infiltration rate would be in the soils in this picture as opposed to maybe being in Windsor? Sandy loam? Would it be literally days as opposed to?
Well, that's the thing. When you get up to the house lot location, that's where you climb up into a well-drained and excessively well-drained soil, which they do not pond. Those soils do not pond. And I'm sure there's test pit data that describes what they found in and around the house. I mean, just a suggestion. I'm going to throw this out because I'm certain my client would not think this is a crazy idea, but you could add in a rain garden on the west side of the house if you wanted to, and take the roof leaders and drain it to the west side. That might alleviate some of the anxiety of the neighbors on the east side. I mean, that's a very simple thing to do. You could put it into a small infiltration gallery. That's what I have at my house. It's just a very simple plastic tub surrounded by stone, and it goes into the ground, and then it doesn't affect my neighbors. I mean, those are simple things just to infiltrate the roof leaders as opposed to just letting it flow over the soil itself. I didn't recommend that in my letter because typically with these kinds of soils, they do infiltrate quickly, so that tends not to be necessary, but that would be one small added measure you could request.
You could make that a site-specific, just saying.
It might be more productive than a ditch and less unsightly than a ditch.
How long could it take for this type of soil to drain in the 10 or 20-year event if you had the 4 to 6 inches?
That's a tough.
This was like a week or so ago when we had this 3.5 inches of rain.
Yeah, that's a tough question without knowing how big the watershed is. But generally speaking, I mean, these soils take a few days to infiltrate and drain, especially if it's not during the growing season.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. So, do we want a motion to continue the public hearing?
Before we do that, do we have any other questions for the applicant? Do we want to?
Did you want to do a site walk?
Well, I want to continue the public hearing, and then we'll go into the sidewalk pieces after that.
Doesn't it happen the other way around?
So if we continue the public hearing, we'll go do our sidewalk.
Well, you have to discuss the site walk inspection
Yeah.
first, and then you
That's
continue the
true,
public hearing. Because you can't discuss it once you continue.
You're right.
So, and I do believe that maybe perhaps a site walk would be beneficial to help answer those questions between the public and the agency and the applicant. And we'll just have to follow the site walk rules, of course. And we do have time.
Because that was our question.
Yep, so
Back to that.
I tend to cover everything. So basically, the latest you can close the public hearing would be about May 16th. So May 2nd puts it on day 14. So if you want to schedule a site walk in between then with the applicant, make sure he's available, then that would work in between that time frame.
So you have to close May 16th, the latest.
Yeah, you have to close the public hearing on May 16th because that is day 35.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know. Day 35. Okay, so we can do a site walk if that's what people want to do.
Yep.
Do I say consensus?
I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, I see consensus. So we'll do a date for a site walk.
And then we'll go over the rules of the site walk at the site walk.
Yeah.
Just to confirm too, because we are in public hearings, I'm pretty sure the site walk is public. Do we have to confirm with the applicant?
Yes,
that
they could-
consent to that?
You'd
Yeah.
be okay with that?
Yeah.
No.
I haven't heard the rules yet.
Just
Just
for us to.
come back
Just
up.
to do the site walk. The site walk, when we're at the site walk, we don't ask any questions or anything. We just look at the site and,
It's observation and fact
It's
only, no
observation.
discussion, and then everything is discussed at the next meeting.
Yeah, again, Reinhardt Von Hollander for the record. I don't have a problem with that.
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So today's the 18th.
Mr. Hollander, stay up there because they're going to schedule a date with you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna be tough.
What's a good day for,
Does, jeez. Do you want to do a Friday site walk? Usually we do our site walks on Fridays.
yeah,
I don't know if
Friday the 21st,
The
which is this Friday?
you could do this Friday, you could do next
Next Friday?
Friday. You can do any Friday before the 2nd.
Do we have to advertise?
Time?
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, my understanding is because we're in public hearing, it would just be like a meeting. We have to,
Advertise
24
the meeting.
hours notice.
Oh, yeah, we need
Yeah,
24,
it's,
24 hours, we're good.
It's 24 hours because we're already advertising and discussing this during the meeting.
Right, so we can advertise it.
So there's
Thursday.
enough time.
Plenty of time.
Okay.
So you can do the 21st if people?
Yeah.
Either one of those dates better for you?
21st or 28th?
I'm fine with either date. 21st is fine.
5 p.m., 5:30, 6,
Is it,
4.
Yeah, we'll share everything.
Anybody know what the weather looks like for?
Right?
let me
It's gonna be
look.
80.
Oh, there
It's
you
supposed to be
go.
hot. It's supposed to be hot.
I'm in.
This weather's crazy.
We can, I'll serve sangria.
5, yeah.
5. You still
Yes.
working?
Yeah, it's supposed to be 80 and there's no rain.
Afternoon's fine, I mean, after 4.
How about 5 or 5:30?
5 o'clock?
I would 4 or 4:30 work better on my end, but
I'm not available, but that's okay. I'll take the notes.
And did you want to do a different Friday to make all members available?
Or 5 o'clock?
Yeah, all right, 4:35, yeah. 5.
Miss Chair, would you want to do the 28th instead so Miss Martin can attend?
It's okay.
Okay.
No?
I don't,
Okay.
yeah.
Just making sure, I'm just.
Thank you for offering. Thank you.
Yes.
So
5.
5?
April 21st, 5 o'clock, Friday, this Friday?
Yep.
Sir, is that fine?
It's fine by me. Thank you.
April 21st, 5 PM, Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
all right, Madam Chair, I'm going to make a motion to conduct a site walk and continue the public hearing on IW 677 92 Post Office Road, application for the development of a single-family home, Winbrook Homes LLC, owner applicant, map 47, lot 10, R44 zone.
Second?
Kevin? He was going to say. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Donna Corbin Savinsky.
Yes.
Kevin Zorda.
Yes.
Virginia Higley, yes. Robert Hendrickson.
Yes.
Ann Collins.
Yes.
Nancy Martin.
Yes.
Phil Kober.
Yes.
Motion, 6 in favor, motion passes. So we'll do a site walk this Friday,
I'm
5
sorry,
PM.
I'm sorry, Miss Chair, to interrupt you. 6 in favor?
7.
Okay, just making sure.
4, 5, 6.
I don't want to miss anybody.
Came in late, yeah. 7. So site walk on Friday, April 21st, 5 PM, and then the public hearing will continue at our next meeting,
May 2nd.
which is, what day? May 2nd.
What is it?
We'll meet on the property. Thank you very much. Yeah, we could review all this documents.
Yes.
Next on our agenda is the old business. Give people a chance to, what they need to do.
Hi, so for old business, we have the DPNs, however, they were withdrawn. You do not need to make a motion to accept the withdrawal as an applicant's right to withdraw. So the next one is 147 Abbey, which we received a request to have this continued by the applicant's attorney.
Okay, so are we withdrawing all 4?
No, not
All 3?
Just, yeah.
3.
Just three.
131 Town Farm,
Yep, so you
128 Moody, and 24.
Yep, so you'd make a motion to also table 147 Abbey's DPN.
Well, we did that last time.
Like for today, I mean.
Oh, but we didn't take it off the table.
You can keep it on table.
We keep it on the table,
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I meant.
Yeah.
If I,
Yeah, go ahead.
for the record, Derek Donnelly on behalf of the
Yes, hi,
the applicant. Nice to see you again. I'm getting frequent flyer miles, so happy to be here. We did put in a continuance for this as well as the enforcement action. Just so you're aware, my client's hired J.R. Russo to do some surveying of the property. He's hired Rick Zulik of Datum Engineering to delineate the wetlands. So at this time, and again, the erosion control measures remain in place. Nothing's being touched as far as the property goes based on the standing cease and desist we have for excavation as well. So what we'd like to do is ask you to continue this as well as, I believe it's item 12,
Oh, the
The
violation.
violation.
The enforcement.
I would think to the first meeting in June would be enough time to have all that stuff done. I talked to, I know J.R. Russo is pretty busy tonight. We talked to him just a few hours ago. So I think first meeting in June, by that time, we'll have everything delineated. We'll be able to, have some
Back with some
productive
information.
conversations.
Ms.
That makes
Chair?
sense.
Ms. Chair, may I add that the fact that the applicant is getting an engineer on his team really shows an effort on their end to try and supply the agency that information that we requested from the beginning, and it does help begin the rectification for the violation.
Yeah,
Yeah, we appreciate that.
we appreciate
Thank
that
you.
very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So see you the first meeting in June.
Very good. Thanks so
Okay.
much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a good night.
So, Madam Chair, just to confirm, for items 10, A, B, and C, applicants withdrawing the DPNs.
Correct.
And item 10D, we're leaving tabled.
Correct.
Yes,
All right,
till
thank you.
June, and he'll come back June, first meeting in June.
Well, for the
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Donnelly, can you wait 1 second? Nope, okay. Just to clarify, the violation is tabled until June.
Right.
Yeah.
And number 4, the DPN 147 Abbey Road, D, item D.
Or is there a time limit on the DPN?
That's what I'm trying to think, because we've never continued a DPN from now for like
I don't think
a
so.
month ahead in a meeting.
But it's still tabled, and he requested it, so.
He did not specify the time frame exactly, but I just want to make sure that we're not.
Give us
You
an
just said-
extension.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant in the extension request. Usually they're supposed to say how many days they are requesting for an extension.
Maybe you could email
So,
them or-
Yeah, and I'll just verify that, because I don't want you to table something until
can sit down.
June if you don't have that authority to table a request for that long. But you're probably right, but just let me make sure to cover the agency.
Maybe he could just send you something in the email.
Yep, I will.
That'll be perfect. Okay. So that brings me to the next page, yeah. So the next one is DPN 2023-040410, Patricia Circle. Request for a jurisdiction ruling for the installation of an in-ground pool with surrounding patio. Natalie Wright, applicant, James and Jenna Herrick, owners, map 70, lot 66, R88 zone.
That's why I got confused.
Oh, yeah, that's why.
Hi. Could you give your name and address for the record?
Nadia Wright with Giuliano's Pools, 321 Tocqueville Road.
Okay, let me-
So we are proposing a 20 by 42 by 31 in-ground pool with the safety fence, 800 square feet of patio, and a 12 by 24 shed at 10 Patricia Circle. The land there is relatively flat. No tree removal will be happening. For erosion control, it will be silt fencing and straw wattles. If we do need to stockpile just for, backfilling purposes, we can also put silt fence around that as well. There is an escarpment on the property, it seems, but it looks like the pool area is mostly outside of it, except for the shed and a little bit of the patio. That's the basics of the project. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Let me see. So I did actually go drive by the property the other day, because it's saying there was escarpments, and I was looking at the contour of the property, and it's 110 in the front and goes down to 100 in the back. So that's a 10-foot difference. And they're saying it's flat, so I was kind of like, how can it be flat? There's 10 feet
Yeah.
difference. So it looks like I didn't get out of the car, obviously, but it looks like the property is flat, and then it must drop down and then go back.
Yeah.
Because there is a shed out there already as well. And you
Yeah,
can't see the whole shed from the road. You see like part of it, like you're not seeing the bottom of it. So there's got to be like a drop there to go backwards. So I was wondering, a couple things. What's happening to the current shed? We don't have any information on the new shed.
Yeah, we do.
It just says it's 12 by 24.
And it's going to be in the escarpment.
Yeah, so I'm wondering where it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because I guess it does have a little picture back here. But there is a current shed. So are they taking that out? They're keeping that?
Yeah, I
mean, you're the
spoke with
pool company, but I don't know if you know
That shed
that.
is not
I
there.
spoke with the homeowner. He told me the shed was proposed, so I didn't realize there was an existing shed there.
Yeah,
But it
there
would
is.
be replaced. The old one would be taken out.
Yeah.
Our aerial imagery is very out of date, so the previous owner could have had a shed there, or perhaps it was an old shed in the past.
No, I drove by it, so there is
Shed
a
is
shed.
there.
There's a nice shed out there, it looks
Okay.
like. looks pretty new. But
So it's basically like a replacement shed?
Yeah, that's what he was saying. I didn't know that there was an existing shed.
Yeah, no, that's fine,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
fine. You're the pool company.
It says,
So
it
the
says
fact
that
that
it's going to be
sorry.
proposed, so it's I take it as in addition to.
Well, it's
Doesn't
not
say
in
it's replacing, it says it's proposed.
So it would be replacing the shed from what Ms. Wright has said. It wouldn't be in
So
addition to the existing
Are you saying
shed.
that the existing shed is coming down and they're going to put a new one up right on the same spot?
Yes, it would be replaced. I wasn't aware that there was an existing shed, so if I was aware, I would have, yes, I would have worded that differently.
Yeah. I'd like to see the shed out of the escarpment. That's just me. I don't like things in the escarpment.
Yeah, and what's going to be stored in the shed, probably.
Yeah.
Chemicals.
Bless you. Yeah, so I had questions regarding that shed.
Yeah.
And in
Run
your,
off from it.
also in your narrative, I didn't realize you guys did this, that you can haul the water away when they drain down.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I didn't know you guys did that. Interesting.
Yeah, we have tanker trucks.
So I think that could almost even be a condition of approval. 'Cause I think with the escarpment draining.
Well, as a DPN that we can
Yeah, you
set
can't
Oh, that's
condition a
right.
DPN.
That's right.
The only other thing to keep in mind is that the shed is existing, and again, I'm not sure what is stored there exactly, but they're just replacing it. So they would have to do more soil disturbance to move the shed out of the escarpments than leaving it as is.
So I think we need an application for this, so we could
Yeah.
find out more about this shed.
Yeah, I'd like
and-
more information on the shed. I don't have a problem with the pool per se,
Okay.
but I really have concerns about the shed.
Okay, I understand that.
So I think we need to turn this into an
Or
application
take it out.
and get more information
Yeah.
regarding the whole process of what they're doing.
Yeah.
The pool part was great.
Yeah.
I liked how you narrate it for us and do all the different phases. I think that's great.
Yep.
Just to
But-
be clear, I'm sorry, I'm just pointing something out on the application I saw. It's a 64 square foot shed.
12 by
24.
24, is that 280?
200, okay, making sure.
Yeah, and I'm kind of wondering where it is in
Yeah,
reference to
I
the.
have
I have concerns
concerns.
about it. And I really don't understand how the ground goes.
Yeah.
But I do know it, like,
Yep.
dropped.
Yep.
From the front yard, you couldn't see the backyard, because, it dropped down.
It'd be interesting to see if there was a permit pulled for the existing shed. A lot of people put sheds up. I'm not saying they did that.
No, I
Well, you
A
don't
lot
have
of
to,
people-
depending on the size.
Right, but years
Yeah.
ago,
Oh, years ago.
you had to,
Yeah.
at least a zoning permit. And, I can't imagine a zoning enforcement officer putting something in an escarpment, but that's just me.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think
So,
we,
yeah,
It's
Madam,
only a 3% grade, almost 4.
Madam Chair, so based on the escarpments and potential disturbance, I'll make a motion to require a wetlands permit for DPN 2023-0404, 10 Patricia Circle, request for a jurisdictional ruling for the installation of in-ground pool with surrounding patio. Nadia Wright, applicant, James and Jenna Herrick, owners, map 70, lot 66, R88 zone.
Second?
gotta write this down. Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, can I have roll call, please?
Donna Corbin Savinsky.
Yes.
Kevin Zorda.
Yes.
Virginia Higley, yes. Robert Hendrickson.
Yes.
Ann Collins.
Yes.
Nancy Martin.
Yes.
Phil Kober.
Yes.
7 in favor, motion passes, that this will be an application. And we need more information on this,
That's
the
what they,
existing shed, the new shed.
they'll have to supply that when they do the permit.
Yeah. What's going on there?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Yes, you too. So next is enforcements, which is Abbey Road, so he's not, we already did that.
Do we need to make a motion to officially table it till June?
We did,
Well, that was for the DPN, not for the
I think
enforcement.
we have to make a motion for that because that's really your.
Yeah, you discussed
not
it on
really
the
a-
record.
yeah.
It's fine.
So you're all set there.
So I did have, I know he's not here, Rick's not here. But we did talk previously on 9 Manning Road, and he was supposed to resolve everything by today, weather permitting. Did we get an update?
By today,
Pardon?
today was the date. So Rick has actually been sick.
Oh, that's too bad.
And Mr. Lataki, they have been in constant communication.
Okay, so maybe
So
next meeting.
They are working towards it. I just don't know what Rick's timeline is looking like at this point.
Okay,
So
so maybe next meeting you can get a little update.
again, I'm not sure what his timeline is.
Well, if he's better.
I'm assuming.
If he's better. I hope he's better. 2 weeks.
It's not better who's doing his work.
Yeah, this is true. Next is new applications to be received.
Ms. Chair,
Yes,
report.
oh, I missed one, sorry, because I have too many scribblings on my application, on my thing. I didn't mean to leave that off.
Board of Planning staff.
Yes, reported planning staff.
Okay. So as we previously discussed, the only report I have was I've been doing some extra research lately, just to try and make sure we're up to date with everything and that our commission is acting as right and doing everything correctly by state statutes and our regulations and our ordinances and just this and that and everything. So there's going to be some, like in the future, we're planning on having some of the regulations redone. There's a lot of errors in them. And before I knew a lot about like this position, the regulations seemed fine. But when you compare them to the state statutes, they are severely outdated, even though they were just revised in 2020. One of them being our section 8.9 for DPNs and the section above that for agent approvals. And we found it interesting because like even our past predecessors were doing it this way. That means our past planning directors were doing it, our past wetlands agents were doing it this way, and our past zoning officers. And the issue is that the terminology in the regulations is incorrect. I also found out that Enfield is one of the only towns that refers to the jurisdictional requests as determination of permit need. So sometimes when we ask outside attorneys or any other attorney or whoever expert and professional who's not in Enfield and not familiar with that terminology, it can be easily misinterpreted as an application. And there's been some research behind that because we found section 22-42A-C1 that talks about that and section 22-42A-C2 that discusses that. So we are going to have another meeting with our town attorney in the future, fairly soon, just to discuss some of the stuff with the agency and what we found. But I just want to let you know that we're going to have to revise our application again, even though we just revised it, because technically our DPNs and our agent approvals, they should be separate forms, and we have them all combined as one, and that can be so confusing. And the entire time, ever since the agency made that motion to make me their delegated authorized agent, that gives me the power to sign off on building permits to an extent of what's listed in the agent approval regulations. And apparently, there's a couple other things that come into play whenever I issue a building permit. Agent approval is kind of what they're referred to as, where the applicant of that building permit is supposed to publish in the paper my action. And usually we provide them something. And our predecessors have not technically been doing that. And if our predecessors don't do that, how are we supposed to inform our new staff members? So every now and again in Enfield, we find things that are just a little bit off and outdated or incorrect. So luckily, we have the public to help us bring some of those tensions to light, as we did. So hopefully going forward, we can rectify this issue, revise our applications once again, and that way we're all on the same path. With that being said, we should also be talking about the map amendment process as we did a couple months ago, because we need to adopt those soil delineation reports. Those are done by professional wetland scientists. They have years and years of experience, and some other towns I've been talking to do this, where they call it an annual map amendment public hearing, and then they just adopt all the delineations they've received. Their town's GIS doesn't update, though, because that's a whole GIS issue, nothing on staff or the agency, but it's noted in files for the record for the addresses. So in the future, if a property comes in and we have that noted down, we use that delineation report and we can provide it to them as, hey, our GIS mapping is super old. This is the delineation method. And then that helps rectify that issue that we face where an applicant comes in, they have a delineation, but it's not like the wetlands GIS layer. They have to do a map amendment before they apply. that's ridiculous, because then we'd be doing essentially double public hearings on everything going forward. So when I was talking to Ellington, yeah, that's what I found with like when Savannah Nicole was here and Raquel, that's exactly what we did. And that just leads to more confusion and just more time that we don't need to necessarily allocate ourselves to. So basically having this yearly map amendment public hearing will really benefit not only the agency members, but staff and the applicants. And it will help us keep a record because we are in the process of updating that GIS system. I'm not sure about the wetlands layer necessarily, but we are getting an entirely brand new system.
And I think during having that meeting, like you mentioned, and even having an expert come in so that people understand, I think, what I see, we have wetland scientists come in and they talk about what they do and I think, citizens get the wrong opinion that these people are making things up or they're, where they're following a scientific process and they're digging pits and they're looking at very specific things. So what they're doing is they're telling us what they found. They're not making assumptions or anything like that.
And quite frankly, they've gone through the education, they've
Right.
gone through the training. And if you don't go through that education and you don't sit through that training, how are you as a public member supposed to understand this?
Yeah, I went through 2 semesters of soils. They go through a lot. Yeah.
Same, which is why I did not pursue a career in soils. So just a little heads up that we are going to be fully discussing this. PZC did adopt the POCD, so it does comply with our wetlands goals going forward. And hopefully from that we can also, once we do our regs and our application, we can do that brochure we were talking about to help small homeowners or large scale developers. So, and I really do believe that we as the agency are moving forward to protect Enfield's interest in mind for wetlands. Of course, there's complications that come with that as well. And state statutes change, regulations get revised, so keeping up with everything is part of that process. And luckily, you guys do your training, so that will only help us more.
And I thought that the revision to our requirements were actually mirrored the state.
Yeah, I thought they did.
That was my understanding.
So
is
they
that mirrored.
are, but they're just mirrored from when they were first adopted.
Okay.
In the 2020 change, what the color in red is what was added. That's not a lot. There's only a couple of changes. It's not a big update from when Enfield adopted the state regulations, which is why we need to do a deep dive into them, possibly section by section. So this could be a very long thing to do. But once we get through, and it's mostly just Section 8, Section 7, and 2 other small sections. It's not a lot, but it's the context that can be a lot, and it can be overwhelming. So when we get to that area, or that point in time, I'll give you guys all the corrections that staff recommends after we have meetings with our town attorney and some other consultants involved, and we can go from there. But just so you're aware that we're actively working towards a goal.
Well, you said you were. You said you were going to work towards it, and we would do it after the POCD.
Didn't think it would come so soon.
And you were going to work on some of the P, C, and Z or whatever.
Yeah.
A little bit before.
So we've been doing.
Make sure we're all in sync.
So this is just such a weird event of time because our DPN and our jurisdictional process gets brought to light, and at the same time, our zoning regulations are about to be rewritten, and those have so many inconsistencies in them. They reference sections that don't even exist. Footnotes give power to the use table, which is how we have all of our drive-throughs. It's not a use, it's a footnote. So it's just, there's so many inconsistencies with Enfield, and I think that's why I'm never bored, because there's always something to learn how to fix.
That's good. That's good.
So
yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity to bring Enfield to the state of the art. And
So that's something interesting that you bring up because I'm here every day, 9 to 5. It's my career. And a lot of times when we have ideas like that, CT Deep likes to use towns' websites as examples. And one of them being our aquifer protection page, which took me 2.5 years to do. Kim Zapla, the state representative for aquifer protection, really likes our website and wants to use it as an example. A lot of towns are still struggling, but regardless of that, hopefully our wetlands page could be an example. So little steps, and I think we'll get there.
We're getting there. We're getting there. Takes time. Keeps you busy.
Definitely. Never a dull moment.
So just one question for staff through the chair. I think it was a meeting or two ago, we discussed East Long Meadow was doing a project.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have an update? Did that get approved? Did we get more notice, or is that still pending?
I do not know. Once we receive the notice, that's all we really get involved with. As I said before, you can go to their public hearing. Their planner has told me their PZC chair is pretty amenable to out-of-town residents, especially out-of-state residents. But just keep in mind that if you do go, you're there as like a public member, not necessarily an agent from the Enfield Wetlands Commission. The other issue with that is that you're crossing state regulations and town regulations. And in Massachusetts, most of their wetlands regulations are dictated by their state Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. So, which I found was a little odd, because usually we do wetlands approval and then planning and zoning approval. In Mass, their wetlands chair is their conservation chair, and their applicants are not required to go to the Conservation Commission. Instead, what they do is they go to planning and zoning, and they can either choose before or after planning and zoning to get a referral from the Conservation Commission. And then they work with Mass Deep going forward, and that's pretty much how that works. That's all the information I was able to get from the planner, but he also did tell me that the Enfield residents are more than welcome to go and see him and ask him questions.
Good, thank you.
That was discussed briefly at the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. They had received, Lori mentioned it to them at the meeting, and their two concerns were whether the rail cars were going to have covers on them and when the rail service was going to be. In other words, were they going to do it if the rail service was not going to be done in time?
So that's the other issue, is that the railroad is a different jurisdiction. It's federal. So the states don't get involved, the towns don't get involved. It's all federal. So they're going to have to work with the Federal Railroad Agency to figure that out. And from my understanding, parts of the track in Connecticut aren't even complete. But I'm not sure if that's like still accurate, if they're actively working on it, but that's just what our recent records show.
Just for your information, the meeting is tonight in East Long Meadow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Shows you how much we're not involved in East Long Meadow.
Yeah, we've had, even with the town, roads, going through all those applications where they do cross the railroad, they're not allowed to do anything like, even if the road is destroyed, they can't repair it, even if they want to.
Yeah, unfortunately, federal is a whole different level of authority, and that's not something we really dip our toes into, mostly because federal is federal. They don't have to listen to local concerns. So there's only so much we can do as a small agency.
Right. What we can say. Okay. New applications to be received is IW 679, 161 Post Office Road. Application for re-subdivision, Garrett Homes LLC. Applicant Mitchell Wajner, owner 68, lot 232 BL zone.
I have a question.
Okay.
Quick question. Why are we doing a re-subdivision? In other words, isn't that putting the cart before the horse?
There's a state statute where any application for a subdivision where the property involves any wetlands on it has to be notified to the wetlands agency. So that's why we've done subdivisions in the past as well. It's a state statute requirement that they file an application for wetlands within 10 days of filing an application for planning and zoning.
Thank
So
you.
they just submitted them all at once.
Yeah, it's easy.
Okay.
So I know this did come before us once before, but if you could pull any history to let us, for wetland piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
See what.
I can see what I can find.
See what
And
you can find.
Just so you understand.
Sounded familiar, and I said, oh, we did that
Yeah.
recently.
So I just want to let you guys know this is what I do for history requests, because unfortunately our archived records, they're not organized by address. So it just makes it so much harder for staff. And you just have to understand that we really do try our best to find these file numbers. And I don't know why it's organized by file number. It just is. Today we organize by address. So when I have an application like this and I need the history, what I tend to do is I reference the deeds first, try and get an idea of when the lot was created or when the houses were built or whatever's out there. So essentially, I'm doing my own title search, which I do quite frequently for inquiries. So if a deed references a map, like a subdivision map, and that map has approved by planning and zoning June 30th, 1968, but it doesn't give a file number, I'm still lost. So I have to go back into those minutes from 1968 and request them from archives, which sometimes takes days. And that's even if those minutes exist. There are so many spots in our historical minutes that are just gapped.
Yeah.
So for example, this one I was working on, I needed minutes specific to 1955 in July. There was a gap from June until September, the 1 month that I needed. And if those minutes are the only thing that we have that reference file numbers, and once we find the file numbers, then I can pull them and be like, hey, I need this file number. I need to reference historical history for a pending application. And that's a 50-50 shot if I even find the file number. Now, granted, it is the applicant's responsibility to provide us with that file number, but they're at the same spot I'm at. How do we find a file number that's not referenced on a historical subdivision map, and the minutes are dull and vague and missing, and the ink is so old it sticks to my hands? Just a little idea of what I have to deal with for historical references. And this title search, though it sounds small, it takes me days, sometimes weeks to find one thing. And it's just going through years and months and weeks of minutes and reports and staff reports and just all this extra document that should be fairly easy, but it's just not organized that way in Enfield. So town clerk is my best friend. They really help me find the historical references that I need.
Good.
Anything else?
Miscellaneous.
Madam Chair, I had a few things for that. Just the first thing I noticed, our new bylaws are still not on our website. I just kind of wanted to reiterate that.
I thought that, yeah.
Yeah, we got the hard copies, but I looked online and it still says pending from 2020. So that was one thing. The other thing is I noticed, I think it was in the town manager's report, that the town clerk's office received FOI training recently. I know I had brought up that we would like to be informed and attend that. I don't think we got that opportunity, so I'd just like to have that brought up for FOI
Do we know what
training.
that new training is going to be? June. Did you get to save the date?
I did. That seems like land use, more towards
Yeah.
PZZ and ZBA. So again,
Yeah,
FOI.
I wasn't sure what it was for, yeah.
I kind of want to make sure we're on that. Another item I wanted to bring up, and I think we did get briefed on this from staff, that previously on the website, everything was like a separate item. Now they just upload one giant document called the master packet.
Yes.
I kind of understand the time idea of that. The downside is actually trying to download that and view it on your phone. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to still break it up by applications. Just
Let me explain that. We've had a lot of inter-office changes, one being getting rid of notary requirements, the other being not uploading every single document to the website, because quite frankly, it takes forever to upload. The website is so glitchy, and there's been more error in uploading single documents than there have been in the master packet. So what we're able to do is, even though the master packet is giant and takes long to load, it's beneficial because you can actually search the master packet for exactly what you're looking for, and it will bring you exactly where you want to be instead of scrolling through page after page after page. So we figured that out with the PDF software, and we're in the process of writing that down for the public so they can learn how to do that and navigate the master packet easily. And once you load it on your phone or tablet or whatever, that file is always on your tablet. You can reopen it. It's just that one initial download. But quite frankly, getting rid of that website document by document, it was essentially a courtesy for the public during the COVID era. And now that we're kind of exiting that era, it gives staff more time to allocate attention to different matters like historical references or appeals or statute regulations or other things that come into our office, because even though we have a full staff, it's still not enough. We're still down one position, and it's an admin position for zoning tech. So that's pretty much why. It just reduces error and it just makes it a little bit more streamlined in our office because we are very cluttered.
No, that's fair. And a couple other things I want to mention. So I know obviously we mentioned the POCD got approved. I'm sure there's a digital copy online. Would it be possible to get at least a hard copy? I don't know if any other members want it, but at least for myself, I'd like to request a hard copy.
We usually get one
So
sometime.
right now, I don't think there is one yet.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that will work, but when it comes about in our office, I'll be sure to ask.
All right.
So because Ag and Con was asking for that too, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we get one.
Yeah, and I think in the past we got them automatically.
Yeah.
I know
Nice
now we're trying to
round one.
release
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah, I think the only thing they're thinking about in regards to that, this is what I've heard, is they're trying to conserve as much paper as possible, just because paper has gone up so much. And their thinking is, why print the draft if they're just going to reprint
Well, yeah,
the
yeah.
actual in the future and the draft's
Final.
online.
Final's good, too.
Though being online isn't necessarily practical, it does save trees. So that's
Then they
kind of
can
where
just
they're
get us
thinking.
iPads.
Or even
Tablets.
like one copy maybe for each commission, but again, I'm not too sure. But they are trying to get you guys tablets. That I do know. We're going to get new technology this year: new phones, new laptops, new computers, and hopefully tablets for the rest of our commissions.
All right, and the last thing I had, and we actually touched on this in the report of planning staff, is looking at the regulations and the map amendments. And I know I think I originally brought it up was probably back in September, and I know we kept kicking the bucket right, and I think we're at the point where we can't kick the bucket right, that we do need to explore updating the regulations and the map amendments. Based on the report of planning staff, it sounds like staff is going ahead to do that. I know we mentioned we like to do it as a committee or as an agency, and we are the proponent. Realistically, it's going to take a while. We're not going to be able to do that in
So
meeting.
what happens is she goes through it and figures out the changes and then gives them to us, and then we
can
and then we go through them and talk about them.
That being said, though, I think we should maintain an element of the draft, and I would strongly urge us to do a subcommittee that could possibly work with the town.
No, we do it as a team.
Yeah, there's also an issue with that. I mean, all of our regulations are done that way. It's just planning and zoning has the privilege to get an actual consultant to help them rewrite it cover to cover. But when we do regulation changes or application updates, it has to start somewhere, and it usually starts in the planning office because the planners know what's wrong with the regulations the best. We deal with them every day, all day, and so many things get brought to light, and there's so many questions that we get asked, and we are literally researching answers every minute of the day. And we're guiding people to that process. So I totally understand what you just said. I hear you. And what we usually do is I will go through it, right? You obviously have your original regulations, but then you'll get the recommendations from staff, and you can decide on those drafts, on those edits, and how you want them to be.
Yeah, and it shows it before and after in the strikeouts and the
Yep.
additions. It
It's
shows
very
it all.
it's very straightforward. Nothing is hidden. It's all laid out for you right in front of you.
I'd be happy to yield my turn to you, Phil.
And we've actually in the past done workshops where
Yeah.
we've gotten days where we've done workshops to work out. some of
Yeah,
the-
and that might be another option
Yeah.
too. But again, I just kind of want to make it clear that my stance would be I think we should definitely be involved in the process,
Oh,
not
we are
just
involved. We
just
are. We
get
are
the
definitely
recommendations.
involved. No, we're involved. We are.
I don't think I would have lived to see another day if I did not involve you guys in your own regulation updates.
Fair. And then obviously the last thing I know, obviously we got to review it. It's still got to go to public hearing and stuff like that. So understanding there's a process, but I just want to
Yes.
make sure
Yeah,
we're.
yeah.
Yep.
Everything is followed through the regulations. There's a process outlined in the regs for updating the regs and in the bylaws.
Right.
Yep. So, no, that, and again, I just kind of wanted to mention that on the record. And then obviously the map amendments, and we had talked about it before and you had brought it up again, is map amendments requiring a public hearing.
Yep.
But our workaround is potentially doing that one giant map amendment based off of that. And I think either we should incorporate that in the regulations or through practice do that. So I just
That's
wanted
going to be one of the sections we're going to reference edits. So luckily, with our lovely state of Connecticut, it grants each municipality its own power, and that is one of your power. The saying is there's 169 municipalities, right? 169 different ways to do the same exact thing, and that's not even including villages.
Right.
Okay. Don't forget about the villages. But you definitely will be involved in that process. Even with planning and zoning, the only difference is that with planning and zoning, if somebody wants to recommend a text amendment, there's an actual form they fill out. Same with ours, but we don't have it outlined as a form. It's more like a referral in a sense. But just some things to keep in mind that you will not be left out.
Oh, yeah, you're not going to be left out.
I can't even remember the last time we had a map amendment. It's
No,
been a while.
It's been a while for a map amendment, yeah.
It was,
How many do we have outstanding?
We've
that you
only had like 4 map amendments, and they're very small.
Yeah.
They're all along Freshwater Boulevard and Hazard Avenue because of all those plazas we have, and those wetlands over there aren't functioning anymore. It's just all paved. So
Oh, that's right.
yeah, like for example, like Raising Cane's. There's there's not really any wetlands over there. The lot was vacant. They came in. Chick-fil-A, no wetlands. It's part of a giant plaza. It's all impervious surfaces, and
AAA.
it just all drains underground.
Yeah.
Even AAA in the back, they did their wetlands pond, and that's about all they did.
Yeah.
So
This way?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, let me check. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's 9:08.
908.